Let's get the mic up. There we go. All right, I think we're killing it now. Let me get everything sorted here for the monitoring process. What's up, sons? It's Blind Rod with Son of a Tech once again. Looks like chat's not fully working, so I'll make sure that it's up and running. Let me know if you guys have any issues there. I'm actually kind of curious right now because we had a bunch of y'all in here. There we go. All right, I had to refresh to get the chat working. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened there. Getting the kiddos off to school. My son's still not in school, but they're headed to the gym, so that's why we're a tad late. That and to be honest, what I was doing was getting really deep into Reddit threads over this Ergo topic that we're going to talk about today, which is there's a lot going on with it. If I am judging by the Reddit upvotes, I'm going to have an unpopular opinion, and well, you know, it is what it is. We're just gonna get through it. In addition to that, we are going to be talking about Bitcoin, basically emissions being at new all-time highs, thanks to the amount of hash rate on Bitcoin, I suppose. Then we're also going to be talking about the new 6500 XT core clock reveal, which is going to impact mining on at least two algorithms that we'll discuss. And we are going to talk about leaked benchmarks from the Intel Arc A380. It's great to see you guys here. I am happy to be back on a Monday morning. Tomorrow will be Tuesday, and I always see you next Tuesday. I'm excited for Tuesday's stream. And we have a lot of content coming your way. I've been working on tons of stuff. We're even getting into metaverses and junk. I am just overwhelmed with information, and I'm trying to parse it out and do as I always do, which is get it into a Google Doc, get it parsed out, sorted, and put into basically everyday common language, which can be quite difficult, and I will probably make mistakes, but hopefully the community will help me get there, and we will get all of these crazy topics described. We got to go through Web 3.0. We got to go through metaverses. We got to go through more NFT stuff. We got to talk about mining and emission changes and all this craziness that can be very difficult to get through, and I'm hoping that I can guide you guys through it to the best of my ability. From a technical perspective, because it's insane. But before we get into it today, let's go ahead and run the ad. Well, it's going to be the partnership for today, which is GamerSups. Today's video is brought to you in partnership with GamerSups. GamerSups provides a healthy alternative to sugary energy drinks with delicious flavors like Misfits Melon or my favorite Blue Raz. I use the GamerSups as an alternative to support my active lifestyle outside of content creation. Caffeine-free options are great for late-night gaming after the kids have gone to bed. And my favorite part about GamerSups is that they accept cryptocurrency. And for a limited time, when you purchase a tub with cryptocurrency, you will receive a Bitcoin shaker. Follow the affiliate link in the description. And don't forget to use code SOAT at checkout. All right, welcome back. So I'm sipping... Actually, not GamerSups. I'm sipping my morning protein shake, but out of the GamerSups Bitcoin shaker here. So definitely go get one if you don't have one already. Send me pictures on Twitter. That is not, that doesn't taste as good as GamerSups. Protein shake, no bueno. All right. So I'm going to take a sip of water. And we are going to start things off with the leaked benchmarks for the Intel Arc A380 desktop. I do need to pull this up real quick, so 1 second. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. All right, coming from WCCF Tech, leaked benchmarks for Intel Arc A380 desktop graphics spotted on par with NVIDIA's RTX 3050 Ti laptop GPU, so not even a discrete GPU. With CES 2022 moments away, Twitter user MomoUS revealed leaked specifications for the newest Intel Arc A380 desktop GPU. This new GPU is expected to be Intel's next discrete entry-level GPU utilizing the Xe HPG gaming architecture. Intel Arc A380, they always do this. Let's move on. The post from Momomo_US was only posted a few hours ago, stating the model, as well as the number of FP32 shading units, execution units, boost clock speed, memory allocation, and L2 cache. The Twitter user discovered this new information from benchmark tests on the CC Software Sandra benchmarking software. It is now confirmed that the A380 discrete gaming GPU will offer new leaks from C Software. Appeared to confirm that this desktop part will feature 1024 FP32 shading units or 128 execution units. Website Video Cards further confirms that with this new leak, there will also be a weaker Alchemist GPU, the A350, that will showcase a lesser DG2-128 EU discrete graphics card offering 96 execution units. Through the various benchmark tests using C Software's tools, it proved that the Intel Arc A380 is more of what could be considered a entry-level discrete GPU and could have the potential to reach as high as mid-range performance levels. The leak also shows that the tests were run recently, processed only a few days ago, and it is unknown when the drivers were originally created. From the screenshot below, we can see that the Intel Arc A380 receives an average score of 2,869.72 megapixels a second in general purpose processing. This lands Intel's new graphics card between NVIDIA's RTX 3050 Ti and the RTX 3050 laptop graphics processor when talking about performance. I can't even click on this, but let's go ahead and try to zoom in. So there you go. There's the Arc 380, and it looks like it is, not fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the memory information for us miners here, because I think that will be the most interesting piece of this. All right, so, because this is a little hard to parse through. So this is the A380, right? That's what we're talking about. Up to 6 gigabytes of GDDR6, 16 and 14 gigabits per second, 96-bit bus. What is that? That probably equates to possibly RX 6600 mining performance, or not? Because what was the RX 6600 bandwidth? RX 6600 specifications, please. What was it again? Memory 14 gigabits per second across 128-bit bus. So it's not, yeah, slower than the 6600 in mining, more than likely. It does look like some of these higher end could be promising though. The 256-bit bus up here. The A580 having a 128-bit bus with 60 to 80 watts, but it says laptops, so not desktops. This says laptops. This says laptops. The only desktop ones we have right now is that A380 and the A330. And then the performance is around laptop GPUs. Almost half the performance of the RX 6600. This better be a super budget GPU, essentially. I think at this point, I think that's probably what it's gonna be, right? at this point, what we're looking at with the A380. So performance not looking that good, not looking that great. As far as the mining performance goes, we've already talked about it before. It doesn't look like it's going to be that great. We only have a 96-bit bus, and we are still using the old GDDR6 memory. So I'm not that excited about it. Let's go ahead and hop into the information for the RX 6500 XT, and this one's cool. So if you guys recall, we talked about the RX 6500 XT and the 6400 now going to be moving to 6 nanometer. And as a result, what that ends up translating into is a higher core clock. We'll talk about like the couple now. All right, so let's clarify some things. First of all, a majority of mining is focused on memory performance. That being said, there are a couple algorithms that do benefit from core. We'll talk about those. They do come with what I would call some downsides though. An example would be Flux, I believe Ton coin, which also just recently one of their pools got hacked, unfortunately. But these are examples of algorithms that do, favor core clocks. So this could be relevant, especially with Flux taking off as much as it has. The downside of core clock performance on a mining algorithm is going to be a couple things. Majority of is going to be heat dissipation off of that core and the power consumption being turned up over other algorithms. That's just the nature of the beast. But if we were looking at core performance, this isn't looking too bad. This month, we expect not one, but 3 companies to unveil their entry-level discrete GPUs. One of them is the upcoming Radeon RX 6500 XT graphics card from AMD. As we have just learned, the RX 6500 XT is to feature a boost clock of 2,815 megahertz with the game clock set to 2,610 megahertz by default, which is around 9 to 10% higher than the 6600 XT Navi 23 base GPU. The RX 6500 XT and the RX 6400 will both feature Navi 24, a new GPU that is manufactured using the TSMC N6 process technology. This is the first GPU to utilize this node and possibly the last Navi 2X GPU before AMD moves Navi 22 and 23 to 6 nanometer at some point in the future. AMD Radeon RX 6500 XT is to offer 1024 stream processors, up to 4 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory across the 64-bit interface, and TDP of 107 watts. It will be the slowest desktop card to be offered by AMD board partners, with the RX 6400 being an OEM exclusive. As a side note, one of the spec sheets that we have seen mentions 18 gigabits per second memory. Now that is interesting as well, while previous leaks suggested 16 gigabits per second. A higher memory speed would increase the bandwidth to 144 gigabytes per second, and apparently this has been confirmed by leaker Greymon now, is what the article's been updated with. That memory performance could be beneficial. Of course, we are talking about something that couldn't mine Ethereum just based off of the 4 gigabyte capacity. That being said, that faster memory speed is not going to hurt with mining. Now, other altcoins, right? So we have different options within the mining sphere that 4 gigabyte cards could work on. But check this out. As compared to the boost clocks on the 6600 and the 6600 XT, we're over like 10% increase, 2,815 megahertz. Now, if you have played with Flux or Toncoin, etc., you'll notice that those core clocks directly impact that mining performance. And having this new, manufacturing process at 6 nanometer, increasing those core clocks could mean, significant performance improvements for things like Flux, and is going to be something that I keep an eye on, especially with the low TDP, which is significantly less. So the RX 6600 is at 132 watts, which is 30 watts more. Well, somewhere around 25 watts more. And then the RX 6600 XT is at 160 watts, which is, let me do the math once again there, 53 watts more as far as the total board power. We know that the 6600, will do somewhere between like 78 to 100 watts at the wall while mining, depending on the algorithm. With Flux, it's about 10 watts more than it is on Ethereum, I believe. So it was like 90 watts, 90 to 100 watts. We could see that reduced on the 6500 XT, and then we could see, of course, some extra boost out of that core clock, making it kind of an interesting pickup. This isn't something that I'm saying go out and buy day one for mining Flux. We don't know. Don't worry. I'll try to get my hands on one, and I will test it and vet it and give you guys all the information. As always, your best bet is to wait for reviews, at least traditionally, but in today's current market, that almost goes out the window, and you just get what you can get at retail, right? Like if you're going to go wait overnight, I doubt you're going to waste a ton of money on buying this at retail, because more than likely the price will go up and you can at least resell. Of course, that may change. We may hit a bear market here and then, have to wait longer. There's a lot of other stuff that could go on. But I'm excited about this GPU, actually, even more from like a budget gaming perspective than anything else, and just new technology in general. It's interesting that they are pushing that GDDR6 up to 18 gigabits per second. That'll be some of the fastest performing, I believe, because it's only 1 gigabit per second slower than GDDR6X in the NVIDIA GPUs. So that's pretty neat. Let's go ahead and talk about the Bitcoin hash rate mints new all-time highs. The metrics has fully recovered after a plunge in mid-2021 as the Chinese government clamped down on local miners. Hash rate figures for Bitcoin set new highs on Sunday night after crossing previous highs from mid-2021, data from analytics tool Glassnode show. Hash rate refers to the amount of computational power used by miners dedicated to minting of new Bitcoins and verification of new transactions on the Bitcoin network. Millions of calculations are solved each second to win new blocks in a process called mining. Now, you guys are aware of this. You guys know what's going on. Higher hash rates mean a stronger and more secure network, making it hard for a group of attackers to execute a 51% attack, which you guys should be aware of already on this channel. I know you guys are up to date, but the upkeep of such intensive machinery is costly and requires high technical knowledge, which has historically led miners to set up in inner regions of China where manpower is affordable and climate conditions are conducive. The Chinese government, however, isn't big on crypto. A crackdown on local miners and mining businesses last year saw Bitcoin hash rates plummet as low as 61 exahashes per second in June of 2021 from over 190 exahashes per second in April of 2021. Data at this time estimated that over 46% of Bitcoin's requisite computing power was supplied by Chinese miners. The ban has since led to an exodus of Chinese miners to other regions such as Kazakhstan, Iran, and the US. But Bitcoin since bounced back, and the network has not taken very long to recover. Glassnode data shows hash rate spiked to 201 exahashes on January 1st, surpassing April 2021 levels. Some engineers say the recovery showcases the network's resilience after a plummet last year, weathering and completely recovering from a 50+% drop due to a mining ban by the country with the most hash power as a major milestone for the network resilience, said Casa Wallet founder and Bitcoin developer Jameson Lope in a tweet on Sunday night. Right now, Bitcoin hash rate hovers around 189 exahashes per second on Monday morning at the time of writing, as the data shows. So obviously, we're looking good as far as like the recovery there. One of the things that I wanted to check, and I'm actually going to pull up, is going to be Bitcoin hash rate. What's it called again? Hash rate map? I don't know. See if there's one updated right now. It's just let me make sure I get the right one. Yeah, so if you take a look at it now, which is crazy because even earlier this year when I was on BitBoy, it was just like intense over here. But check that out. 35% of the total hash rate is in the United States. Russia has 11%. Kazakhstan has 31 or has 18%. So it looks like the US is leading the charge on Bitcoin mining now, which is something that I would have honestly never expected. Also, I did want to mention something about the article that doesn't seem correct. While I do agree that it requires a whole bunch of like technical knowledge to a certain extent, as far as like, you probably want like a good network engineer, you probably want a decent like sysadmin, you probably want people that are like, you know, can clean and maintain the boards. It's not a ton of manpower compared to other industries, you know, like mining lithium or something along those lines. Of course, I guess part of that would be due to there, but you know, once they're actually built and you're mining with them, I'm saying. So moving to the United States actually does make sense because while the cost of manpower is higher, the types of jobs for people that work in a Bitcoin mining facility are typically higher paid anyways, right? So if you're talking about like network engineers, etc., it makes sense. It doesn't like, you need a few good guys. That's it. You don't need a ton of manpower to run a Bitcoin mining farm compared to other industries, right? So that's a key distinction that needs to be made there. Oh man, guys. So one of the big things that we have to talk about right now is going to be Ergo and a soft fork proposal that would change the emissions, change the emission rate of the coin. Now, I've been pretty high on Ergo for quite some time. I think that the development has been going in the proper direction. You see use cases there with their NFTs actually being workable and functioning good on their Ergo auction house. You see the launches of their decentralized exchange on the Ergo DEX with future implementation of Cardano coming. You see a lot of good stuff happening. This is concerning, I think, to me personally. I don't like what I'm seeing here. I've seen this with a lot of other coins in the past, and I'm also fully prepared to take the brunt of being on the side of the negative here for this proposal. So what is this proposal? It's going to be EIP 0027, and let's go ahead and talk about it. So basically, this is the Reddit thread. There's going to be the Ergo forum thread that we're going to talk about. There's two threads there. And then there is the less popular yet just as relevant vote no option here for the Reddit thread as well. So let's just kind of get you guys caught up to date. I was trying to figure out exactly, and this is why I'm a little bit behind. So you guys are going to have to help me understand the math here because I don't really understand what the initial impact is. It looks pretty significant as far as the initial impact on mining rewards. So currently, after the last epoch, we went from 67.5 erg for mining rewards per block to 66 erg per block of mining rewards, and that just happened. So right now you're at 66 erg per block, and then of course that gets dispersed out based on the amount of shares to the mining pool. There's also something else to note here, just to give you guys like an idea. As far as we understand, previously on Ergo, it was supposed to not have mining pools. At this point, it does have mining pools. And the reason this is important is because what's going to happen with the voting for this process is that you are essentially going to vote via miners. Now, the problem with voting via miners when you have mining pools active is that the vote ends up going from the mining pools. We had this sort of a similar situation, I suppose, with EIP, whatever the big one was with Ethereum, 1559. And that it's kind of the same concept. This is a little bit more impactful because the votes will be directly related to how the miners decide. And unfortunately, what that means for the individual miner is not much, because unfortunately, like, you're going to be mining to a pool. The pools will have the majority of the vote stake, and therefore the pool operators will be making the primary decisions in this case. And I think that's important because one of the arguments that's going on here is like Ergo and its principles of being for the people, not for the developers, not for those in charge, not for the mining pool ops, that sort of thing. And I think that that's just from a principled standpoint important to push out. But this is an emissions retargeting soft fork. The author is Kushti, and it was proposed on December 17th, 2021, and last edited on December 20th, 2020. Now, I did hop into Discord and try to get some more clarification. I don't have anything at this time. What I do have is like a few updates and where it's sitting, like it's still being discussed. And, I'm waiting on more information. But let's go ahead and get the information that we do have, right? So starting from block 699,393, first block of the 684th epoch, new emission rules applied on top of rules described in the Ergo white paper before end of the current emission. If block reward is not less than 15, send 12 ERG from it to the remission contract. Otherwise, block reward R is less than 15 ERG, send R -3 from it to the remission contract. After end of the current emission from block 2,080,800, pay 3 ERG each block from remission contract. So here's where it's kind of hard to like parse through all of this. So long-term security of Ergo protocol, including crypto economic security, always has high priority. One of the hottest topics in this field is instability or stability of cryptocurrency protocols without the block reward. It was planned during the launch of Ergo Network that the end of emission miners will be rewarded with transaction fees and also storage rent. However, it is hard to estimate yet how successfully will storage rent replace emissions. Thus, it was proposed on the Ergo forum informally via a soft fork to prolong emissions with preserving total supply. This EIP is concluding previous discussions and provides details on the emission for the soft fork design and implementation. Now, if you guys recall, emissions were going to end pretty soon. I believe it was like 2027. And then all of the Ergo would be minted. And then at that point, essentially what you would have is just fees being paid out to the miner. So from the miner's perspective, just fees would get paid out. What they want to do is extend the emissions, and the exact amount of time was a little confusing. I've seen them say 18 to 20 years as opposed to the 8 years, which almost doubles the time, but without increasing the total supply. So to do that, what they have to do is reduce the mining reward significantly. And what you start to run into, obviously, is that at the end of the day, what they're doing is messing with monetary policy. Now, we'll get into the negatives of that. We'll get into the positives of that as well. This does go back to the same kind of principles that, of course, we talked about with EIP 1559. So, where you stand on EIP 1559? in some ways, in principles, should probably tell you where you stand on EIP 27 for Ergo or Erg. That being said, that's with the just purely messing with monetary policy portion, not necessarily the implementation, because the implementation here, isn't going to be burning. Well, it sort of does. So this is where I'm not getting a lot of clarification and that I don't understand. And that is with the remission tokens where the miner is sending a portion over, right? So when we're going through this, the details are a little fuzzy. How much does the actual block reward reduce initially? And then from there, my understanding is it reduces -3 every epoch. So here's the soft fork proposal. So if block reward is not less than 24 erg, send 21 erg from it to the remission contract. Otherwise, block reward R is less than 24, send R -3 erg from the remission contract with the following rules starting from block blah, blah, blah. Total remission fund then would be about 23,553,600 erg. So that'd be getting pulled out from the ecosystem as best as I can tell. All right. So do you guys see where I'm getting into confusion here? Because what they haven't clearly stated, and this is what I'm trying to get information on, is how much this impacts the payout for miners, right? So for example, for height, the reward is 75 minus 3 times this, which equals 66. But for height, 1 million reward, 75 minus 3 times this, which would equal the 27 erg. So how much does it actually reduce is kind of where I sit down and I don't understand exactly. And then when it reduces, what is it? It's sending some of that as not a burn, but to a remission contract. So we have some people in chat helping out here a little bit. Okay, so Andrea says the first output should be protected by the same script and the numbers of Ergo, and it should be the equal remaining miner's reward. Yeah, so that still doesn't make sense. So we're talking about as clear as mud. So yeah. So you're saying we will lose 12 erg after the soft fork. So the initial reduction for miners will be to the actual block reward will go from 66, just saying if I understand this correctly. So if you say 12, it would go from 66 to 54. And then it would decrease every epoch by 3 ergo from there. Then, okay. So then my next question is, which doesn't make sense. So if the block reward is, okay, if that's the block reward and it's 54, and then there's also the remission contract, it says in here, okay. So it says in here, let me pull this up again. Where was it? And this is where I guess clarity is a little difficult. So it says in here that if the block reward is not less than 15, which would be the 54, send 12 erg from it to the remission contract. So is the 12 erg what you're talking about there is always going to go to the remission contract? Or is it now that the Ergo is at 54, you take another 12 off of it? Do you understand where the confusion is? Like, it's not, so is it all just this remission contract that they're basically not burning, but sort of burning this 12 erg just from the regular reduction? So it would be the 66 minus the 12. And then once we get down to, so it's just going to be 66 minus the 12, but that 12 ergo is still going into the contract. And then when it's 15, it goes down by 3. So it's clearly just reduced mining rewards. Like from the miner's perspective, the block reward goes down by 12 every epoch until it hits 15, and then it goes down by 3 every epoch. So regular reduction. So what we're talking about here from the miner's perspective, just so we're clear, because obviously the way they're doing it and writing about it with the remission contract is essentially saying that you would take the emission, like you would take this reduction and put it into the remission contract. But from the miner's perspective, all it really means is your mining reward is going down by 12 every epoch. And then once it hits 15, once the reward is down to 15, it goes down by 3 every epoch. And then it's getting put into a contract. That is, how is that? So okay. So from the miner's perspective, that's what we're talking about, right? And then they're locking the current reward, the additional, and then that's going to be pushed out further so that they can extend out the emissions from 2027 to 2057 or something like that, right? Whatever it was. I've seen various comments on all of that. So here's what's weird to me. That means that this ergo is still being minted. It's just being put into a contract to add to the block reward in the future. You see how this is like a little confusing? And if it's in that contract, that means it is technically accessible. And if you're already changing monetary policy, what's to stop them from changing the monetary policy later and accessing those funds within that contract? This is the problem from the get-go that I see, right? And I understand that from their perspective, my understanding is that there is an inflation issue within Ergo. And that's what's trying to be solved. But to me, this sounds exactly like Ethereum. Messing with monetary policy, post-contract, against the principles, and that's kind of a problem. So from what I'm seeing, I understand this. Well, the chain would always be mineable. You mean that it would incentivize mining for longer because there would be a set block reward, right? So from what I can tell, most of this there is a lot of support for it. And so I think like one of the positives here is that the miners are voting on it, but one of the downsides to miners voting on it is that because it is no longer, one miner, one vote like originally intended for Ergo, which that's already gone to the wayside. Consideration for ASICs is pretty much like a possibility as well. And then on top of that, now we're messing with monetary policy to adjust for major inflation that is causing, the mining, the already mined rewards to be low. And then the way that they're adjusting the monetary policy is taking a portion of that and putting it into a contract. So you are actually still minting as far as I can tell, still minting the ERG and then putting it into a contract. It seems messy. It doesn't seem to necessarily favor miners in general, other than being able to have block rewards for further out. Once again, like, to me, it reeks of, like, obviously because it's an inflation issue, then the issue is, maintaining the value of the ERG for the current holders of ERG. I'm kind of like, I think either way, there's trouble here. Okay, so to me, I think if you don't do it, there's trouble with the major inflation, right? And if you do it, there's trouble because you've gone against the principles. I think that, like, no way you cut this cookie does it end up going well. So I'm just super cautious around this at this point. But all of the arguments that are for it go along these lines. I vote yes for soft fork. It will lead to scarcity for its hold. Miners will hold it most, then sell. Buyers will buy more and hold it too. Other devs will feel confident to use the network to build dApps. This argument I don't know any support for. Will be good in marketing. All of those points are behind every poor decision that Ethereum's ever made. All of those points are behind every single bad decision Ethereum has made. You guys need to keep that in mind. All of these points are behind every single poor decision Ethereum has made. And that's the problem. Let's go ahead and go into the vote no against points. We'll talk about a little bit here. I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about the platform. So, EIP 27 is a proposal to change the emission past the original 8 years as stated in the white paper. I am surprised this is even being discussed. This is by Fanboy XX9 on Reddit. I don't know his credentials. So there could be incorrect data here. We'll try to parse it through. I tried to do as much research as possible as I could. Obviously, I only had this morning to do it, so I can make mistakes as well. The monetary policy cannot change in a decentralized money system. Is it okay to change the monetary emission of Bitcoin? Ergo should be above all this. Did my research and went through the Ergo white paper, the teaser, the Ergo manifesto, and the YouTube video here. We cannot change the emission curve. It is part of the social contract between the devs, users, and miners of the protocol. It is an open contract. The miners do work and get a certain reward as promised. Number 7, contractual money. In our opinion, the overwhelming majority of use cases this is from the white paper, for public blockchains, even those that claim to provide general purpose decentralized world computer, are for financial applications, which do not require Turing completeness. For instance, if an oracle writes down non-financial data into the blockchain, such as temperature, this data is usually used further in a financial contract. All right. So I believe this is quote from the Reddit article. I believe the snapshots above demonstrate the hypocrisy. I don't know that I agree with that, but we'll kind of get into that in a bit. The manifesto and white paper talks about Ergo being a platform for contractual money. Who's going to take this seriously if the most important and fundamental contract of the system is broken by the project's core developers? It would turn into an extremely ironic white paper with how it shows the promised emission curve and just below it talks about contractual money, while later the community breaks this promise. The main developers issued 93,409,132 coins in May 14th of 2019 to be allocated for miner rewards, with the emission curve ending in 8 years. That is the contract. You change it, you break it, is what he's saying here. Some may argue that this is not an actual change to the contract because it's somehow voluntary. Now, that is a point, right? The miners will all vote on whether or not they agree to put parts of the rewards into a small magic box, which will remit it back to them at a later date. So that is what's going on here. They'll use a contract to basically take a portion of block reward, which has already been minted, move that into a contract to then be paid out once again back to the miners at a later date, therefore extending the length of block rewards outside of fees that go to miners. That's the clarification here. So then the cut is, like we said, the -12, -12. All right, so let's go ahead and go into it. The truth is, this is not fair and not voluntary in any way, is what he says. I always tell my kids, fair's not a thing. Nothing's fair, right? That's not a term you're allowed to use. That's not an argument. Fairness is not really an argument in my general vocabulary. That being said, let's talk about the not voluntary portion of this, which I think there is a point here, which is that, like we've talked about, because Ergo has mining pools, the decision doesn't go to the individual miners necessarily. It either goes to the very large solo miners or to the pools themselves. They make the decisions. You and I don't make these decisions. We aren't influential enough to make these decisions as far as from a voting perspective, if we are voting based on where the miner is pointing their hash power. All right. So not voluntary, I think I could agree there. But the white paper states that miner rewards, which means a reward belonging to the miners, nobody can take this reward away from them. Not the devs, not the community, and not even another miner. So then the discussion is, right, if the miners are making the choice, just in theory, right? If the miners are making the choice to move along with the soft fork, then the miners are not having the block reward taken away from them, but they are giving up or voluntarily giving that to the network. The question would be is, once again, who's making this vote in reality? Is it each individual miner, or is it really just the mining pools? And then how are the pools incentivized? Seeing that pools have low fees, yet they are building up their wallets, etc. Typically, mining pools are more in the hodl state. This is coming from being a mining pool op in the past. You just hold a whole bunch of it. Because of that, I would say that as a mining pool, I would want the mining rewards to be reduced to then thereby inflate or increase the value of my holdings. That's how I, as a find what I would find as a pool op beneficial to me, right, in general. But, you know, that could be said for the individual miners as well. We can kind of go through that. To implement this soft fork would be a tyranny of the majority over the rights of the minority. The miner reward is a right for every single miner. I think we've kind of already talked about this, right? Like, because the vote comes from the miner, technically it doesn't go against the white paper because, you know, from their perspective, the miners are making the vote on this, okay? That's how I feel about it. Now, he does go through like founder quotes here. No function or monetary policy changes are possible if no bugs are there. Is major inflation a bug? Should we take all of the founders' sayings to be, you know, the Bible for Ergo or Erg? I mean, I don't know. Quote, potentially Ergo is not worse as digital gold than Bitcoin because of limited supply cap, fixed monetary policy, and proof of work. And then, quote, and Ethereum is not so good, I believe, as Ergo. Bitcoin is a store of value, right, as digital gold, because its supply is not limited and monetary policy is not fixed and can be changed at any moment. I mean, you got to be careful what you're going to say, I suppose. But it does do a slippery slope to blockchain without work, is what he goes on here. Is the next paragraph. If some type of community majority can pressure the miners into putting their reward into a magic box, then proof of work, instead of being a part of a social contract, turns into a social policy that can change to become anything. The community could in the future take even more from the miner rewards for all sorts of schemes, such as community coin staking or founding of some kind. Eventually, the community can take all miner rewards and fees and then turn the project into proof of stake. The supply cap can even be removed, since a precedent has been made that there is no social contract and it's just policy. In short, EIP 27 emission change could set a very bad precedent that could lead to further bad things down the road. This will not help the price. It will look really bad. So the price of Ergo 10x in a year. What's the problem here? Crypto's priced regularly 2 to 8 times in very short periods. Inflation is mostly negotiable compared to the massive demand spikes that occur in crypto markets. Trying to alter the price by tweaking the supply is playing into supply side economics, and it's a fallacy. Nothing will raise the market cap except for new demand. It also signals a bad message. 1, the project has no fundamentals and anything can change. Number 2, no long-term belief in project or future demand, so community is resorting to supply side economics instead. Number 3, no long-term belief in project future utility and transaction fee generation for miners, so the system has to be reconstructed. Now, this is an important note that we should talk about, because they want to extend out the mining rewards. Now, part of it, extending out the base block reward, does signal that they don't think that the fees alone will be ready to compensate miners and keep the network secure past 2027 without additional block rewards being implemented. That does signal an issue, right? Like, keep that in mind. That is a good point there. It's clearly not decentralized like Bitcoin, and Bitcoin emission cannot change. Miner future incentives. There is an argument going around that there will not be enough incentives for mining after the 8-year emission. That's what I was talking about. But let's ask ourselves, what is enough incentives? Enough incentives for what? For security? If Ergo doesn't get very big after 8 years, why would we need so much security anyway? In such a case, it will probably be used for low volume, non-critical financial applications anyway. You don't need Bitcoin level security for that. Secondly, even with low hash rate, it's still possible to have a very secure system with proof of work. First of all, we can always put the Ergo block header hashes into another blockchain with stronger security and secure Ergo that way until it gains hash rate security on its own. You can piggyback on top of Bitcoin security and just be just as secure as it. I think there's some fallacy in his argument there, but secondly, the community and exchanges don't need to immediately jump over the longest chain if it's clearly an attack that is forking the chain from a few blocks. Instead, everyone says with the chain they subjectively saw first and continue treating it as the canonical chain. Only if the attack persists, being the longest chain for a few days, does the community concede defeat and reluctantly and gradually move over to the longest chain so as to maintain long-term objectivity. This drastically increases the security and cost of attack, reducing the incentive to attack, and makes most 51% attacks a minor inconvenience. Proof of work is more secure than people think. 51% attacks are not fatal. So is it worth changing fundamentals for no real gain in security just to avoid minor inconvenience? And he says no, but Oh, I think now he says, I believe that instead of signaling a lack of confidence, we should just work hard to ensure that Ergo has a lot of utility and generates lots of transaction fees for miners in the future. Having a deadline of 8 years is a good thing and would probably increase the chances that the work will be done. In 6 years, Ergo will be able to say it has zero inflation. What other project can say that? Why should we throw that away? I understand that currently the inflation is relatively high. Now, I'm hearing massive in my chat just for people that aren't reading the chat. But we should all remember that sound money is more than just low inflation. It's about not having technocrats playing or manipulating the monetary policy in principle. Now, we can go in through some of the arguments against this. I'll try to get through them. So, all right, let's see if we can get this. Just trying to remember the ones that worked the best, right? So maybe I missed something. It was a long debate after all. But in the back and forth, you mentioned that the coin issuance contract is part of the social contract, but as far as I can tell, it really isn't. Section 2 lays out what you could call Ergo's social contract. The subsequent sections are more method than promise. So I don't see Section 6.1 as a contract, but as a described implementation. If Section 6.1, and this is where we're getting into, so this is where I don't like these types of arguments because it's what do you call it? It's nitpicky, right? It's going through and saying like, well, it's not actually in this that's not actually part of the social contract, even though it's in the white paper. And it's like, okay, well, let's get to a better argument. All right. All right. So Wilford says that he came around to it. The proposal is more consistent with those ideals in current monetary policy, and that it supports miner security decentralization over a longer period of time. So the other headings in Ergo's social contract are decentralization first, open, permissionless, and secure, creative for regular people, a platform for contractual money, and long-term focus. So he's saying that the long-term focus means that like extending this out is a good thing. So he says I guess I can see it there. Let's go ahead and go down there, arguing a little bit more. I believe, where was it down here? The big issue that everybody agrees on was this one. So I do think you're onto something with the claims about censorship. I reread what you wrote a few times and have to come to agree with your position regarding a miner having the right to the ERG in the emission contract. Okay. Remember, this is kind of like where we get into the weirdness. So, and I know this stream's going on super long, but where we get into the weirdness with this one is that there is a form of proposed or accused censorship by the fact that the block reward, reducing the block reward, right? As opposed to taking a portion of the block reward and sending it to a contract, means that there's like a weird censorship problem here. And that seems to be like the biggest problem that everybody's kind of agreeing on, or at least like moving towards. So, from Ergo social contract, anyone can join the network and participate in the protocol without permission. Unlike the traditional financial system, no bailouts, blacklists, or forms of discrimination should be possible on the core level of the Ergo protocol. Insider advantage should be minimized. And again, from the social contract, in case of intentional violation of any of these principles, the resulting protocol should not be called Ergo. If this change is pushed, miners that are unwilling will have their transactions effectively censored. A fork should occur. Real Ergo will be the one that did not accept EIP 27, and those that accept the change will lose the rights to the name as per the social contract. He thinks that this is the strongest argument. Okay. So this argument here is just saying that nobody could account for, what would happen to Ergo later on at the very start of it. This is all math. And if you're a developer, just real quickly, just like if you're a developer and, you do math for a living and you're calculating out your total supply and the miner reward, etc., I feel like you would pay a lot of attention to that and would be able to foresee, maybe things like inflation issues. All right, let's go ahead and go through chat real quick. We don't have time for the rest of this. This definitely turned into basically a full-on research. How do I feel about it? I don't feel good about it. Obviously, like, inflation issues are a problem, but the arguments to combat them are the same arguments that I've always seen used in ETH before something really bad happens, especially something really bad to the miners. I don't like that individual miners aren't going to really get a say, because we do know that the mining pools are going to be doing this, meaning that it's social contract, while true to the miners, I think it still holds up, because technically, like, nobody can take it away from the miners would be voting for it. So while I think that's true, I also think it's not true, because the individual miners aren't individually getting a say. I don't know. Let's go ahead and get through this and see how you guys are feeling about it. So we are going to talk about this for a little bit so I can get better perspective on how we need to work on a final video for it, because we'll probably need to do a wrap up. So Detroit Irish makes the observation that it sounds like ERG is going into a CD, certificate of deposit. Yeah, I mean, like, essentially they're taking a portion of the block reward and locking it up in a contract to later then be paid back out. Paul Dodery says, I'm sorry if I said that name wrong, it is messing with the social contract, but it's not to directly benefit the devs, ICO people like ETH did. If the emissions go away is a problem, though, it's kind of like kicking the can down the road. So my question would be is, do the devs and initial coin investors, which there aren't in this particular one, right? But the longer term holders, or the devs, do they not own ERG? And does not reducing the mining reward reduce the supply, which then increases the price of the ERG, thereby directly benefiting them? That's my question. Fried Club asks, well, how many of the miner votes would actually be the devs or dev influence? That's a good question. What I think you guys should do is, I think you should head to the Reddit posts and upvote the ones you agree with so that it gets more visibility. And I think that if I do anything, I guess I want to create visibility for this so that more people are aware of it, right? All right. Iman says, Asav will the contract affect miners who are mining directly to an exchange? I mean, it affects everybody. It reduces the block reward. Andrea says, it's better to reduce ERG mining rewards now while we have better mining profits from other coins. Later, it will be more benefit to Ergo when ETH 2.0 is implemented. Okay, but does it violate the social contract in your opinion, Andreas? So, okay. Your argument is timing. The argument I'm seeing is not about timing, it's about whether it should be done at all. So now may be the best time, but that doesn't mean you should do it. It's like, is it better for me to die now or die later? I guess I'll pick die later because I don't want to die right now. That argument doesn't make any sense to me. Because that's not the discussion that we're having. At this point. Anyways, I got to get ready for jujitsu. I want to read more and have a discussion. I could be incorrect here, but so whenever I see more points and better, well thought out arguments on one side than the other, I start to lean towards that one because like you have more detail there. The arguments for are not as detailed and not as well thought out as the arguments against in this particular case. Does that mean for sure this shouldn't be done? No. I just think that the people that are pro need to have more well thought out and well constructed arguments for the for, and then I could analyze it from there. No, my ear's still messed up. Is it the side? Yeah. My ear's still messed up. Oh. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go have fun in jiu-jitsu. And we will be back with the crypto mining morning show tomorrow. And yeah, well, that took up our entire hour. So we'll be sure to cover the mining markets tomorrow. Because I've talked about Ergo so much, because we have the how-tos and everything, I felt like bringing this to everybody's attention was super important. And especially because it's changing monetary policy. And traditionally, like in the past, I've always been against changing monetary policy. So if anybody expected me to think differently, then I don't know. I've never been for it. I'll see you